My name is Bridget. I am 29 years old, and I once lost everything because I wanted too much. I am an accountant. I work with numbers, with receipts, with quiet tables and long reports. People think numbers have no feelings, but my life changed because of them. I used to sit at my small desk on the second floor of a shopping mall. Every morning, I arrived at 8. I greeted the security man. I walked past the coffee shop that always smelled sweet and warm. I turned on my computer. The screen light was soft and blue. It was the same every day, and it was safe. My boss was Mr. Daniel. He was not only my boss, he was my friend. He trusted me with the company money, and he trusted me with his silence. Sometimes he brought me tea when I forgot to take a break. Sometimes he stood by my desk and asked, "Are you okay, Bridget?" I always smiled and said, "Yes, I am fine." But inside me, I was not fine. Every afternoon, I watched expensive cars enter the mall parking lot. Big black cars, shiny white cars. I saw women step out of them with high heels and dark glasses. Their bags looked soft and rich. Their phones looked new and bright. They walked like the world was waiting for them. I sat behind my desk and checked numbers. I lived in a small apartment with pale walls and one narrow window. My bed was near my table was near my kitchen. At night, I lay down and looked at the ceiling. I held my phone and scrolled through pictures of big houses, long stairs, wide glass windows, white curtains moving in the wind. I told myself, one day this will be my life. I repeated those words many times. I said them when I woke up. I said them when I ate my simple lunch. I said them when I counted the company's money that was not mine. One day, my friend from work, Clara, sat with me during lunch. She opened her food and smiled at me. "You work too much," she said. "I want more," I answered. "You already have a good job," she said gently. Good job. I heard those words many times, but they never stayed in my heart. Good was not enough for me. I wanted a big office. I wanted a higher chair. I wanted people to stand when I entered the room. At night, I updated my CV. I changed the words again and again. I added small things and made them look big. I opened my LinkedIn page every day. I looked at other people's success, new positions, new titles, new cities. I began to feel late in life, even if I was only 29. Every morning, the mall lights turned on one by one. The cleaners pushed their carts, the shop owners opened their doors. The sound of metal keys and moving chairs filled the air. It was a normal life. It was a calm life. But my heart was not calm. One Monday morning, when I opened my email, I saw a new message. The subject line was short. It had my name in it. Job opportunity for chief accountant. My hands stopped moving. I read the line again. I looked around the office. Everything was the same. My desk, my files, my old calculator. But inside me, something jumped. I opened the email. The company wrote that they found my CV on LinkedIn. They said my experience was strong. They said they needed someone like me. They wrote about a high salary. They wrote about housing allowance, car allowance, health benefits, travel benefits. My eyes moved slowly over every word. I read the email again and again. I could hear my own heartbeat. Chief accountant. That title stayed in my mind like a song. Softly, I closed my eyes and saw myself in a big office, a glass table, a soft chair, a name on the door. My name. For the rest of the day, I could not work well. I entered wrong numbers. I checked the same file 3 times. Clara looked at me and asked, "Are you tired?" "I am just thinking," I said. When the workday ended, I did not go home immediately. I stayed at my desk and read the email again. They asked for an online interview. The date was in 3 days. 3 days felt like 3 years. That night, I cleaned my apartment. I arranged my clothes. I looked at my face in the mirror for a long time. I practiced speaking in clear English. I practiced smiling in a calm way. I felt like my real life was about to begin. The next morning, I told Mr. Daniel about the email. I tried to sound normal, but my voice was too fast. He listened without speaking. He sat down on the chair near my desk and folded his hands. "Are you sure this company is real?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said quickly. "They look professional. They have a website." "Be careful," he said. "You are very valuable here. Do not rush." His words were slow and heavy, but my thoughts were running far away. I did not want to be careful. I wanted to move. Clara was not excited like me. She looked at the email and then looked at my face. "It is too sudden," she said. "Why do they offer so much without meeting you?" "Because I am good at my job," I answered, and I laughed. But my laugh was thin. Deep inside, I did not want to hear their fear. Their fear was like a hand pulling me back. I wanted to go forward. The day of the interview came. I wore my best blouse. I tied my hair neatly. I placed my laptop on the table and checked the camera many times. My small apartment looked different that day. It looked like a place that was too small for my future. When the call started, I saw two people on the screen. They smiled, they called me by my name, they spoke in clear, confident voices. They asked about my experience. They nodded when I spoke. "You are exactly the person we need," one of them said. My heart opened like a door. They spoke about the company growth. They spoke about new branches. They spoke about my role as chief accountant. They spoke about leadership and respect. Respect. That word touched something deep inside me. When the interview ended, they said they would contact me soon. I closed my laptop and sat in silence. My room was quiet, but my mind was full of bright pictures. The next day, I could not focus on my work. I looked at my office and felt that I was already leaving it. The desk that was once mine began to look like it belonged to someone else. I imagined my last day. I imagined people shaking my hand. I imagined telling them I was moving to a better life. That evening, I received another email. "Congratulations, you have been selected." My hands began to shake. I stood up and walked around my apartment. I read the email out loud to myself. Selected, chief accountant, high salary. I sat on my bed and held my phone to my chest. I felt proud of myself. I felt important. The next morning, I went to the office early. I looked at everything slowly. The old printer, the long table, the clock on the wall, the files that I arranged with so much care. Mr. Daniel came in and greeted me with his usual warm smile. "I need to talk to you," I said. He listened as I told him the news. His smile became small. Not angry, not cold, just small. "If this is real, I am happy for you, but please be sure." "I am sure," I replied, even if I was not. Clara hugged me, but her hug was tight, not light. "Think again," she whispered. But I had already moved in my mind. I had already left. That afternoon, I wrote my resignation letter. Each word felt strong and sweet. I thanked them for the opportunity. I wrote about my growth. I wrote about my future. When I printed the letter, I looked at my name at the bottom. Bridget. It looked like a new name. I walked to Mr. Daniel's office and placed the letter on his table. My hand was steady. My heart was not. He read it slowly. He removed his glasses and looked at me for a long moment. "You will always have a place here," he said softly. Those words touched me, but I pushed the feeling away. I told myself I was moving forward. I told myself I was becoming someone new. That evening, when I left the mall, I did not look back. At home, I opened my wardrobe and began to plan my new life. New clothes for my new office, new shoes for my new position. I made a list of things I would buy when my first salary arrived. A bigger apartment, a better phone, a car. I slept very late that night, but my sleep was full of bright dreams. I did not know that I was walking toward the biggest silence of my life. A few days after I sent my resignation letter, I woke up without an alarm for the first time in many years. The morning was very quiet. I did not have to rush. I did not have to prepare reports. I sat on my bed and smiled to myself. "This is the beginning," I said in a low voice. I made coffee and drank it slowly. I looked around my small apartment, but this time I did not feel trapped. I felt like a visitor who would soon leave. The walls looked temporary. The old curtains looked like something from my past. Around noon, I received another email from the new company. They welcomed me again. They told me my starting date. They told me how excited they were to have me as their chief accountant. My chest became warm. I read the email many times, just to feel that warmth again. Then I reached the last part of the message. There was a paragraph about a staff pension program. I read it once. I did not understand it well. I read it again. They wrote that before I could start working, I needed to join their pension program. It was a one-time payment of $12,000. It was refundable after 3 months of work. My fingers became cold. $12,000? I did not have that kind of money. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavy. I read the message again, slowly, word by word, as if the number would change. It did not change. I stood up and began to walk around my apartment. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was trying to stay calm. This is normal, I told myself. Big companies have big rules. This is for my future. I will get it back. Still, something inside me moved in a weak, uneasy way. I wrote back to them. My message was polite and careful. I asked if the amount could be taken from my salary every month after I started working. I waited for their reply. Those hours were long and empty. I tried to watch a movie, but I could not follow the story. I tried to eat, but the food had no taste. In the evening, their reply came. They thanked me for my question. They wrote that the policy did not allow salary deduction, but they said I could pay a smaller amount first, $1,000. To secure your position, they wrote. Secure your position. That line stayed in my head. I opened my bank app and looked at my savings. That money was my life. It was the result of years of careful living, years of saying no to small pleasures, years of working late. If I paid that $1,000, I would still have some money left, but not much. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed. My phone was in my hand. I looked at the number again and again. "This is an investment," I whispered. "This is for my future." But another voice inside me spoke very softly. "Why do they need your money?" I stood up quickly, as if I could walk away from that voice. I called Clara. When she heard my explanation, she did not speak for a few seconds. "Bridget," she said slowly, "no real company asks for money from an employee." "This is different," I answered. "It is a pension program. It is refundable." "Have you met them?" she asked. "It was an online interview," I said. "Have you seen their office, their staff?" "No, but—" "Bridget," her voice became firm, "please stop. Think." Her words felt like a wall in front of me. I did not want a wall. I wanted a door. "You don't understand," I said, and my voice became sharp. "This is my chance. This is the life I have been waiting for." "I understand more than you think," she replied softly. "I am afraid for you." Afraid. I did not want fear. I wanted success. After the call, I sat in silence. My apartment was dark now. Only the small kitchen light was on. I opened my laptop and looked at the company website again. It looked clean. It looked professional. There were pictures of smiling people and offices. There were long texts about their values and their vision. Everything looked right. I opened my wardrobe and touched my best clothes. I imagined wearing them in my new office. I imagined people calling me Chief Bridget. My chest became warm again. "I cannot lose this," I said. The next morning, I went to the bank. My steps were slow, but my mind was fast. I told myself many times that this was normal, that this was how big opportunities worked, that successful people took risks. Inside the bank, the air was cold. The floor was shining. I stood in line and held my bag close to my body. When it was my turn, I gave the transfer details with a steady voice. The woman behind the desk looked at me and asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I answered quickly. When I pressed the final button, something inside me became very quiet. It was like a door closed behind me. I walked out of the bank into the bright afternoon sun. People were moving around me. Cars were passing. Someone was laughing on the phone. Life was normal. But my life felt like it was standing still, waiting. I sent the payment confirmation to the company. I thanked them. I told them I was excited to start next week. They replied with a short message. "Payment received. Welcome to the team." Welcome to the team. Those words should have made me happy, but they did not stay long in my heart. That evening, I went to visit Clara. She opened the door and looked at my face. "You paid, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded. She closed her eyes for a moment. "Bridget," she said, but she did not finish the sentence. "I will start next week," I said quickly. "Everything will be fine." She did not argue with me this time. She only made tea and placed it in front of me. We sat in silence. The tea became cold, but I did not drink it. For the first time, I felt a small, cold space inside my chest. The days before my starting date were long and empty. I had no work to do. I woke up late. I checked my email again and again. I looked at my phone every few minutes. I told myself that this was only because I was excited, but deep inside, a thin line of fear began to grow. The night before my first day, I prepared my clothes carefully. I placed my documents in my bag. I set my alarm early. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself for a long time. "Chief accountant," I whispered. But the woman in the mirror did not look confident. She looked tired. She looked like someone who was waiting for something she could not see. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. I checked my email. Nothing. I told myself it was too early. I waited 1 hour and checked again. Nothing. I decided to call the company. The phone rang once, then it stopped. I called again. The line was not going through. My hands began to shake. I opened my email and wrote a message. No reply. I refreshed the page again and again as if a new message would appear if I looked hard enough. It did not appear. The room became very quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand. I called again. The number was no longer available. A strange sound came from my throat. It was not a cry. It was not a word. It was something empty. I opened the company website. The page did not load. I tried again. Nothing. In that moment, the truth stood in front of me, clear and cold. I was not a chief accountant. I was not part of any team. I had no job. I had no savings. I sat there for a very long time, holding my phone, looking at the blank screen, while the life I imagined disappeared without a sound. I do not remember how long I sat on my bed that morning. The room was bright, but it felt dark to me. My phone was still in my hand. The screen had gone black. My fingers were cold. I had no job. I had no money, and the new life I had built in my mind was gone. I stood up slowly and walked to the kitchen. The cup I used the night before was still on the table. My carefully prepared clothes were hanging near the wardrobe. My bag was on the chair, ready for a first day that would never come. Everything looked like a quiet joke. I tried to breathe deeply, but my chest felt tight. I opened the window, but the fresh air did not help. "This is not real," I said to myself. "They will reply. It is just a delay." I sent another email. I called again. I refreshed the website again and again. Nothing changed. The silence became the loudest sound in my life. By afternoon, I was sitting on the floor with my back against the wall. I pulled my knees close to my body like a child. My eyes were dry, but my head hurt. Then my phone rang. It was Clara. I looked at her name on the screen for a long time before I answered. "Hello?" My voice was small. "Bridget," she said gently. "Did you hear from them?" I could not speak. The words were too heavy. "Bridget," she repeated. "I think—" My voice broke. "I think I made a mistake." There was a long pause on the line. "Open the door," she said softly. "I am outside." I stood up and walked to the door like someone who was very old. When I opened it, Clara was there, with her worried eyes and her warm hands. The moment I saw her, my strength left me. I began to cry. Not loud, not fast, just slow tears that did not want to stop. She held me and did not speak. We stood in the doorway for a long time. Inside the apartment, she made me sit on the bed. She brought me water. She waited. "They're gone," I whispered. "The number does not work. The website is gone. My money is gone." She closed her eyes and held my hand. "I told you because I was afraid for you, not because I wanted to stop your dream." Her words were soft, but they entered my heart like sharp light. I left my job. I left everything. The room became very quiet again. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the truth clearly, not as a small fear, not as a mistake that could be fixed, but as something real. I had wanted a big life so much that I stopped seeing the good life I already had. That night, Clara stayed with me. She made simple food, but I could not eat much. We sat on the floor and leaned against the bed like we used to do when we were younger. "You are not alone," she said. But I felt alone inside myself. When she left, I lay down without changing my clothes. I looked at the ceiling, the same ceiling I had looked at for years, but now it did not hold dreams. It held my regret. Regret is a very quiet feeling. It does not shout. It sits next to you and breathes with you. The next morning, I woke up early out of habit. For a few seconds, I forgot everything. Then it came back. I checked my phone. Nothing. I opened my bank app. The number was small. So small. I began to calculate how many months I could live with that money. My accountant mind was still working, even if my heart was tired. Not many months. I walked around my apartment and touched my things slowly. The chair, the table, the old calculator I had brought home to finish some work in the past. "I left you for nothing," I whispered. On the third day, I received a call from a number I knew very well. It was Mr. Daniel. My heart began to beat fast. I almost did not answer because I felt ashamed, but I did. "Hello, Bridget," he said in his calm, warm voice. "Hello, sir," I replied. My voice was weak. "I heard what happened," he said gently. "Clara," she had told him. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I should have listened. I made a big mistake." There was a short silence, but it was not heavy. It was kind. "Bridget," he said, "we all make mistakes when we want something better. That does not make you a bad person." Tears filled my eyes again. "You worked with us for many years," he continued. "You were honest, you were careful, you were part of our family." Family. I closed my eyes. "If you want to come back," he said, "your desk is still here." I could not speak for a moment. "Come back," he repeated. "Start again." In that moment, something warm returned to my chest. Not the hot excitement of before, not the bright dream of a big life. It was something quieter. It was relief. "I would like that," I said in a broken voice. "Thank you." When I ended the call, I sat in silence. This time, the silence was not empty. It was full of a second chance. The next morning, I woke up early. I wore my old work clothes. They felt different on my body. Not small, not simple, just honest. When I reached the mall, the security man smiled at me. "Long time," he said. "Yes," I answered. I walked past the coffee shop. The same sweet smell was there. The same sound of metal keys and opening doors filled the air. My desk was waiting for me. The old calculator, the files, the blue light of the computer screen. Everything was the same. But I was not the same. I sat down and touched the table gently, like I was greeting an old friend. Mr. Daniel came to my desk and placed a cup of tea near my hand, just like before. "Welcome back," he said. "Thank you for not closing the door," I replied. Days passed, then weeks. I worked quietly. I checked every number carefully. I did not look at expensive cars in the parking lot anymore. Or, when I did, they did not speak to me the way they used to. I ate lunch with Clara again. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we sat in comfortable silence. At night, I went home to my small apartment, but it no longer felt like a waiting room for another life. It felt like my home. I began to sleep well again. 1 year later, Mr. Daniel called me into his office. He smiled in that calm way. "We have grown," he said, "and we need a chief accountant." My heart moved, but this time it moved slowly. "We want you," he continued. I did not see a big office in my mind. I did not see a big car. I only saw my desk, my files, and the years I had spent learning. "Are you sure?" I asked. "We are very sure," he said. This time, the title did not feel like a dream. It felt like a responsibility. It felt real. The salary was good, the benefits were good, but the best thing was the way it came. Slowly, honestly, without taking anything from me. On the evening of my first day as chief accountant, I stayed alone in the office after everyone left. The mall lights were turning off one by one. I sat at my new desk and looked at my hands. These were the same hands that had pressed the transfer button in the bank. These were the same hands that had written the resignation letter. These were the same hands that had counted money for years. I understood then that my biggest regret was not losing the $1,000. It was the moment I believed that my life was not enough. I had been running after a loud dream and could not hear the quiet value of what I already had. Now, when I walk past the parking lot and see the expensive cars, I do not feel small. I think about the morning tea on my desk. I think about Clara's hand holding mine. I think about Mr. Daniel saying, "Your desk is still here." My life is not a mansion. My life is not a shiny car. My life is a place where I am trusted, where I am careful, where I am enough. Regret still visits me sometimes. It sits next to me like an old teacher, but it no longer hurts. It reminds me to look at what I have, not at what is far away. Because I learned, slowly and deeply, that a good life is not something you chase. It is something that grows quietly in the place where you are. And now I hold it gently, like a cup of warm tea that I will never again put down.